secretariat of the institution is presided by a former Minister of Energy and Chilean. So a double reason of pride. Today, I wanted to address you and talk to you about three things that are strictly related. First, to try to understand what is energy transition? How does this impact youth? And what is the message that I would like to leave in regard to how the youth has to face this energy transition, which at the same time is an opportunity, but we must seize this correctly. Energy transition, and I was also professor of this place. There's no better place to talk about what energy transition without a school of economics and business, because the energy transition is essentially a change in the way of production. What we do is to change the way we produce energy, particularly with electricity. We stop producing with hydrocarbons, and then we turn into other type of technologies, wind, solar technology, storage technology. With that, we can bring about a very significant change, both in the economy and society. In Chile, we see permanently, actually last Friday when I was preparing my presentation for this week, which is specifically about storage, we just checked the data on how those substations have changed where they are injecting storage. And we see that the average price where the price goes into these substations are around $150, $180 per megawatt. That is nearly 100 US dollars per megawatt. With the incorporation of these new technologies, clean technologies bring about a reduction of cost that is quite significant, that in turn allow the economies to be more productive and to produce more with less. In that regard, this is crucial, the strategy of development of Chile and the countries of the region. But this is a matter of price and a term of visions, actually. I've been 3 years in this position. I'm going to turn 4, actually. But how did the electricity work? At the time, we reduced emissions around 40%. The emissions of greenhouse effect for a small country like Chile is, for the impact, is a very huge impact, and it's exhausted. But this means a fundamental change in those places where the emissions were produced. So we have now the opportunity to go to Quintero. This is a very close bay, close to Santiago in the northern part of our country, where we have closed all carbon stations have been closed that at some point that they were operating for the change, not only for the quality of life, but the expectancy of life in public health is changing radically. Price, emissions, and security. Chile imports 95% of hydrocarbons, which means that basically all hydrocarbons that our country consumes are imported from other parts of the world. And that actually exposes you as a country to geopolitical and climate change risk. In the past 3 years, I think that I have had these natural disasters and 2 wars. This means that your access and your capability of moving the economy and the access to energy are not within the control of your country, and that is an issue. Clean energies, the sun, the heat of the earth, and the force of wind are in the countries where it's produced. You have to transport the technology, but not input to produce that energy. We've had lots of advances in terms of prices, vision, and security, and access to energy. But as I said before, this is a technological change that impacts, importantly, the economy, but also our societies. I think that there is a community in the peripheries of the metropolitan area. There was some students of the technical school, some of electricity and others of mechanical studies. They were in charge of designing a scale automobile of hydrogen, and they were traveling to the United States to the World Cup, where they run these scale automobiles in order to improve the technology of these scale automobiles. I had actually to make breakfast and then to say goodbye. And then I welcomed 1 month after they came back from this experience. When they left for the United States, when I was professor, there were several people from the 18-year-old kids, and it was very difficult to communicate back then. It was not very clear what was their life expectancy perspectives. There were so many questions. When they came back, actually, they were different, completely different. They all wanted some wanted to join the university and to link to other STEM study programs. Others wanted to create their own business, and some wanted to go back and live in the United States. So they came here and they had the idea to change the world in their own perspective. That is indeed what is happening with the energy transition, which is impacting the life of people radically, particularly the life of the youth. How can we seize this opportunity then that is offered by energy transition and that the International Agency of Energy? This is an institution that groups together a great part of the countries of the world, and they study the phenomenon of energy very thoroughly. Nowadays in the world, there is a labor force that is related to these 6 million people. This actually in the forthcoming years is going to double. It would be 14 million people. The labor force is going to grow in just 5 years, and with more and more challenging competencies. On the one hand, very specific, but at the same time, flexible. That is the size of the opportunity that is offered in energy transition globally. How can we avail these ourselves in our current times? Well, our country energy transition brings about debates and discussion. In 2024, the prices of energy residentially increased a lot, and now these brings about some ambivalence. How is this? How can it happen that we are a leader in clean energy, but electricity is extremely expensive? How's that happening? Well, that's indeed the role that all our public policies have. We have to live the future for a better future. This is the fate of our public policies. So we have to move forward and to be one step ahead. So what's my perspective in the past 3 years? And what's the lesson learned? I'm going to wrap up with this. When we talk about electricity and that it is expensive and we start doing like a double click with that, the prices of electricity in our country has decreased in US dollars. The thing is that the prices were frozen back in 2019, and you needed 600 trillion pesos to buy. But when we froze it, we needed 1,000 pesos to buy $1. Great part of that efficiency was absorbed with the variations in the currency exchange. Now we use 20, 30, 40%. Basically, the hydrocarbons are not used here. We use hydrocarbons less and less. But these hydrocarbons that are within our electrical matrix went through the periods of higher prices since the crisis of fuels in the 70s. The frozen of 2019 was produced, just to give you a simple number, with a price of 700 pesos. The defrozen was 1,500 pesos. Of course, you can cut off or half the hydrocarbons that you use. But if that half that you still use is worth double, it is very difficult to notice. What is the lesson learned here? Our country has been successful in the micro reforms. It has been possible to have more and more stakeholders in each one of the subsegments of the market. They have been able to establish efficient tools to join to accompany and support this change in energy. But this doesn't work with a macro piece. This doesn't work without a society, but that is capable of controlling more and more the different variables that indeed impact the economy. We used to see energy as a very small sector that could actually take for granted what was happening in the rest of the economy. But nowadays, at least in terms of investment, this is the second largest sector. And it is going to lead, is going to take the first place, and is going to bring about more investment than mining. So we should not take for granted the macroeconomic balances, but we have to integrate them within our public policies in order to indeed future and present may have a bridge that will allow both of them to talk. That's why we need to dream, but we need also responsibility. I know that this week, when the youth is going to be spoken about this, they're going to talk about dreams. I want you to talk about dreams to a youth that is becoming adults. I have an 18-year-old son. He's about to start university, and he's always the same. Dreams are very important for the youth. That's what drive them into something else. But as the youth become adults, they also need to understand how those dreams are not only dreams, but they transform into concrete realities, and that may improve the quality of life of the members of our society. So welcome to Chile, and welcome to the Week of Energy, and to the encounter of the youth. And I hope that you seize this as a unique opportunity. Thank you. Thank you so much, Minister, for your inspiring words for the youth. Several challenges, but great opportunities as well. Thank you to the top authority in our country in terms of energy, and now the Executive Secretary of OLADE, Andrés Rebolledo, so that he gives us his opening remarks and welcoming words. Good morning, greetings, everyone. Well, first of all, I would like to stop right here. It's like the formal section, of course, but I would like to highlight that it has to deal with thanking everyone who has been involved in this activity. About a year ago, perhaps many of you already know Valentina, who works with us, and she's a very talented young lady who's been working in energy for quite a while, and in her international relations position, she wanted to get into this engineering space. And she talked to me about planning this Week of the Youth, and now we're here. This is the beginning of the Energy Week. We do this collaboratively. So thank you so much to Benjamin, who has been in ONG 0.5, Youth for Energy, that has a very interesting network in Latin America, of course, the Ministry of Energy, who has been committed with the performance of this event and this week. Particularly, I would like to thank the Dean and the FEN. At the time, I remember they said that I was a former student. There is another acronym, FASEA, and the structure of the university was half what is right now. The quality is the same in any case. The education, training, and the motivation we have when we are exposed to the labor market afterwards. I would like I would like to you and why is it important this conversation and to talk about youth in terms of energy in the region. Those who have the energy organization, this is 27 countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. We have our seat in Quito, Ecuador. You can visit, of course. You can also visit on site through the website. We've done a great effort to communicate through this platform. We basically have the entire networks, save for TikTok. We are not as dynamic, perhaps, for those who are over 50 years old. But I would like to invite you all because we have tons of information, studies that have to deal with challenges and what is happening in the diagnostic Latin America and the Caribbean. We are an international intergovernmental organization. We have 27 chiefs because those who conduct this organization is a board of directors that are composed of ministers of energy in the region. So we would like to invite you all to join us and to work together all these topics on the agenda. The minister said that this was perhaps just to give context, we can indicate this is a plural region, very rich in terms of energy resources, and it has a very important, this is a renewable region that has a renewable energy penetration, the highest in the world, actually, in regard to the electrical generation. Latin America and the Caribbean, we have it. We have an enormous potential to keep producing solar power, wind power, and those technologies are not produced over 1 or 2% of the entire potential. If you just add geothermal and hydropower electricity, there's a huge space for growth. Our region represents 27% of the entire production of biofuels around the world. We don't talk much about the sector or subsector of the country, but it's very important to make the effort of decarbonization of the transportation sector. We have this world champion in fuels, and this is one of the technologies to solve this effort of decarbonization of the energy demand. This is perhaps a challenge that most countries are going through. Our region produces nearly 15% of natural gas, 20% of the entire oil, which are energy sources that are in another stage of development production because of the environmental agenda. But our region produces 25% of critical minerals related to technologies of energy transitions. And as I said, we are a region that has these great characteristics and this great penetration of green energy. The past few months, if you see all the reports of what I'm talking about, nearly 70% of the electricity production in a region is based on renewable energies. Of course, out of that 70%, 40% is hydropower. Basically, that is the support and part of the story of the energy, because this has to deal with the vulnerabilities. This could be a solution for the environmental agenda. But for that purpose, we have to work collectively. We need common visions. We hope that we can move forward within as much as possible within the policies, the discussions, and the technical development in the energy integration. That is our mission and our vocation of our organization, which is to bring collectively those visions and to agree upon common measures so that the region has this seal and has a contribution around the world. Energy nowadays is in the core of development of the countries. Nowadays, energy is intensively a technological agenda. specifically, well, in technology change overall, but there is, you can actually measure this in years. You do not need to measure in years. You can actually measure these basically in real time. As the ministers said, Latin America is making a lot of regulatory efforts, and Chile is moving forward consistently. But energy is also an environmental agenda. Of course, energy represents 70% of the emissions of greenhouse effect in Latin America. Therefore, this is an essentially environmental agenda. And this is an important data. Latin America and the Caribbean represents 8% of the entire emissions around the world. 4% out of 8% is energy. That is half of it. So we're saying that energy in Latin America represents half of emissions. And when you take in the entire emissions, energy represents 70%. So this accounts for this logic from the point of view of the composition of the energy sector. Now, energy is also geopolitics. It's very geopolitics. The minister said, that he had two wars, he's lived two wars. Well, in a country like Chile in Latin America, since they take the prices of energy in their matrices, electricity, and also transportation industry. And therefore, and I know that we have some colleagues, there is a center of youth who work in geopolitics, COLAGE, the OLADE, they're close like OLADE. But they all have these discussions about the geopolitics issue. This agenda brings so many disciplines and topics that talk about economic development in the end. If we look in perspective, the development of the sector, we see these elements, but we also see this great growth from the standpoint of the sector, the GDP, innovation, and investment. Just one important data here in this context, and it's important for you to understand so that you have your point of view, the challenges of labor markets ahead, and that has to deal with electrification, by the way, of the effort of decarbonization of important sectors such as transportation and residential areas. This is the second phase of energy transitions that is coming across our region. This is an important vector of regulatory technological work. I'm talking about electrification in this regard. In that context, just to have this in perspective, Latin America has an installed capacity of 500 gigawatts in electrical market. If you want to reach the stages up to 2050 to neutral carbon scenario, a very ambitious environment, by 2050, that means that 2035, in one decade, we require to make things happen, many things actually, and to have very important flows of investment that needs a great effort in investment. In terms of electrical capacity, we think that we need to install this in our region. So with the renewable and green electrons, our capacity in the region should duplicate. So that means that we need 500 more gigawatts. So Latin America and the Caribbean should incorporate like one Argentina. That's just to give you a dimension and to have a reference country of what it means, the effort of electrification. It means a lot of investment. And by the way, it means a very important impact in the markets and the dimension of energy sector. And I would like to wrap up with this, I promise. In regard to the numbers that Minister mentioned, Latin America and the Caribbean, that nearly 6% of the entire GDP in the region is energy. The sector represents a 5-6% in value of the entire region. That is 2.5-3% of the labor market. That's nowadays, that's currently. But perhaps with the technological developments, what's going to happen is that this is going to keep growing and become more and more relevant in the context of economic development. Thank you so much for joining us, and particularly to those who have traveled here and those who have committed to the organization of this event. We hope, honestly, to have this the first encounter, that this is the first encounter. And next year, I would like to inform you, we'll have the Week of Energy, the meeting of ministers in Dominican Republic, and that we hope that we have the second encounter of the youth. We have the second encounter that is in the agenda in Dominican Republic. And I hope that this sequence turns into and becomes part of the institutionality and the dialogue that you, the youngsters, can take to your countries. And that's our interest, and that's what we have planned. Your vision, your challenge, your perspective to all the ministers of energy across the region that will be called this coming Thursday and then in the Dominican Republic. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Secretariat, and we remain with three important words. Leaders in the renewable energies in the region, we have to deepen the electrification and mobilize finances and investment. These are the messages that you should take away. Let's welcome to Anahí, Director of Innovation and Vice Office of Innovation at the University of Chile, and who's going to give you some words on behalf of the provost. Well, thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. I did something I shouldn't have done, I think. Okay. I'm so grateful to be here today. This is fundamental for the discussions that we are having. I'm so happy that the University of Chile and this space, we're really happy for those who have come here and the trust of institutions like OLADE, but to build this collaboratively with the organizations and the leading you in the energy transition. So this is the organizations of, this is especially relevant when we talk about the energy transition, even though this is like a technological transformation that requires finances, and as was said before, it requires institutional changes. When we see these very deeply, we see that energy transition is a civilizing transformation. It is much, much deeper. It forces us to change our relation with nature and to be part of nature and to understand that the relationship between human beings and nature cannot be of control. It cannot be of a view as if we were independent. It also forces us to think differently on how we relate to each other, how we make decisions. We also talked about that this is a geopolitical, we have this geopolitical aspect. It's not just easy to think about our traditional organizations in our countries to make big decisions and to push these big decisions in energy transition. In this context, when we are talking about civilizing transformation, we must understand also what human beings are, how we have related to energy throughout human history. Perhaps some things are just taken for granted, but in fact, we have to put this on the table. For instance, fire, which is our great first source of energy, made humans not to live differently, to feed differently, but to expand throughout the planet and to see differently. And that was a great driver of transformations that led us to being human. Then when we talk about fossil fuels, when we start using fossil fuels, there is the Industrial Revolution that came up and has transformation globally with a huge impact. We could say, of course, a huge impact from the standpoint where we started to deteriorate and degrade nature in a more relevant way. And these started to grow more and more in the course of time, and it has actually accentuated in the since the 70s. But it is allowed many more people to live. This allowed advances in medicine, in food, etc., so that human beings could exist. And nowadays, we could be more and more. So this is like the last two views. So from the planet, we could say that we are plagued. But from the human beings' standpoint, we could say that children stopped dying as they used to die before. So this combination, having these two dimensions, supports all transformations that come afterwards, the energy transitions. It has important dimensions that we must assess and work with them. In Latin America seems to be especially relevant for Latin American agreement to put our eye, to fix our eye in the complexity of energy transition. Indeed, we are a region as a renewable potential, which is huge, huge. And we can play a very important role in energy transition globally, which is what we need actually. But at the same time, we are a region that is highly vulnerable to climate change. We are quite affected on how climate is changing. As the minister, I think he said, it was the renewable energy related to hydropower. These can be also impacted by the new climate conditions. So we must understand that the energy projections, the conditions, the vulnerability in our territories, so that these energy transitions indeed can become neutral and use our potential. And at the same time, not to deepen vulnerability or inequality that already exists in the region. That dimension of vulnerability against climate change and the structural inequality in our regions is something that must be taken into account when we talk about energy transition. This is not only about a technological transition or transformation. We must take into account all those other dimensions. Also, we have to take responsibility about the challenges in our region. We have so many people that have no access to energy, or that pay so much for energy, and this is relevant. This is very expensive for their budget. They have to use these poor energies. We have contaminated cities in our region because of the use of fuels and energies that are not adequate. So we have these huge challenges, and Latin America, in addition, has a cultural diversity that may help us to make these civilizing things that you started worrying about, but it's also our responsibility, and it's our responsibility because our policy is being dominated by the lack of realism, the denial of the other, and a bureaucracy in Chile. In the environmental issue, for instance, sometimes we try to do our best, but I'm going to give you an example that in Taltal, an electrical substation with no inhabitant 100 kilometers around it has to do a gender-based study. So in the end, what is what we're doing? What is what the country and the people, those who need, they start thinking about this. When we have a hospital that is has no great conditions in the south of Chile, where are we actually doing the assessment of cost and benefit? There is a backlash. This backlash actually horrifies me, and it worries me a lot because we treat immigrants as if they were delinquents, that there is there is no climate change happening. So when we deny and extort the universities came from a world of cancellation that was concerning cancellation. And that is what we should be concerned about, and that's your role, and you must learn. Please, as I said, open your eyes and open your mind to learn, to change, and to try to adapt. When we are involved in such important issues like climate change, we are not thinking about ideology, but the well-being of the entire population, especially those who are most vulnerable. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Dean, and thank you to all the authorities for their messages and words to the youth so that we think, I'm not so young, but you, to think of what we should do. Well, as follows, I would like to continue with our journey. I welcome Georgina Núñez, the Vice President of the Directors Committee of Young America's Business Trust, the Young Voices Transformation of Latin America and the Caribbean. This is her master presentation.
Bueno, muy buenos días.
Well, thank you very much.
Muy buenos días. Antes que nada,
Good morning. Well, first of all, I would like to thank
por esta oportunidad que nos dan a Young Americans
and this is the Young American Business Trust,
Washington, D.C. y que es parte de la Organización de Estados Americanos, de la OEA.
which is part of the OAS. Thank you so much.
Al secretario,
and thank you,
al ministro
Rebolledo.
de Energía de Chile, ministro Pardow, al decano de la Facultad de Economía.
And also thank you to the dean of this school and the representative of the provost of the University of Chile.
Gracias por esta oportunidad. Quiero partir diciendo que lo que vamos a presentar aquí es un poco darles
what we have to find here, it is an international institutionality view of the youth in Latin America. And this
nosotros, YABT tiene 26 años
de
existencia.
has
Pareciera como que para una organización de jóvenes 26 años
and
es cultura, pero la gracia es que estos 26 años o la forma como ha trabajado
these past 26 years and the way YABT has worked is through networks of networks. This is an element that allowed us to link to organizations such as OLADE, ICA, FAO, CEPAL, etc. They allowed us to work with organizations, local organizations and regional organizations that are big part of the work that YABT make. For the agenda of YABT, this presentation on the cadre of youth of OLADE are framed as an event as we have had a considerable impact in strengthening building capacity building, institutionally and professionally. We have supported the development of the youth in the region. So through several programs and projects, we have accomplished, as you can see here, the participation of 61,664 young leaders in the Summit of the Americas to develop over 38,000 solutions of business in the challenges of the region, 53,923 young entrepreneurs that have been trained through the YABT mechanism, 17,000 youth received knowledge, skills, and comprehensive training. Over 45 centers of business support have certified as excellence centers, next links. 2,100 experts have been trained in this methodology. What does the Forum of the Youth of the Americas mean? The Forum of the Youth of the Americas have constituted as the official channel of participation and engagement of youth in the Summit of the Americas. Likewise, it has extended to other political dialogues of the continent, such as general assemblies of the OAS, the ministerial meetings, etc.
In every summit, the youth submit concrete recommendations to the governments and authorities, and they adopt a hemispheric agenda for follow-up purposes. They also provide solutions and actions developed through entrepreneurship, innovation that account for challenges and priorities of the region. For the seventh forum of the youth that is going to take place in the Dominican Republic in December, we have opened applications that will be closed on October 15th for the youth between 18 and 34 years of age who would like to apply as delegates of the youth. To those interested, we invite you all to check our website. In regard to the 10th Summit of the Americas, as you may know, in the Summit of the Americas, there is the meeting of the chief of the state government to talk about policies and for complete agreements nationwide and regionally in order to face the present and future challenges. OAS, as you know, has its technical secretariat, and through the Department of Summits, they do all the monitoring of both the agenda, the mandates, and the evolution of these, as well as the preparation of the summit itself. The presidency, as I said, is in the government of the Dominican Republic, and vice presidency has the organizing government of the previous summit, which is the United States. The previous summit was in 2022, and it took place in Los Angeles. He was the vice president of the Summit of the Americas. There are mechanisms of the review group that is known as GRIC, and this is composed of national coordinators of the summit in each one of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the 34 countries who are parties of the OAS. They're going to hold meetings, ordinary and extraordinary ones, to do the follow-up of the agenda and the previous commitments of the previous commitment. The motto is going to be building safe and sustainable hemisphere with shared prosperity. And the fundamental pillars would be of human security is going to be citizen security, food security, energy security, and water security. We're not going to check in this presentation each one of these dimensions, but we are going to focus mostly on the results of the public consultation that we did in terms of energy security. What are the components of the Forum of the Americas? We have the youth engagement, which are the dialogues of youth, the hemispheric consultation, and events that are related to the forum itself, and the submission of the results before Greek. This is important because each one of these instances, the participation of youth is going to feed up the information that we provide to the representatives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in those spaces. The second component is the action entrepreneurship. This is under the umbrella of the program TIC of the Americas. I'm going to give you some of the Americas. The START Challenge, the Bioplastic Challenge, the Youth Innovation Challenge, which until this year was supported by the Inter-American Foundation. Then we have the informed recommendations that correspond to the political laboratory or policy laboratories. And then we have the leadership laboratories, which is a new initiative in the framework of the 7th forum, so that youth can come with in relation to diplomacy and to acquire these soft skills to interact in a more fluent and effective way with the different leaders. This is This is more detail and how this is through the dialogues and dialogues among the different young leaders, national governments, international organizations, the strengthening of the relations with the governmental representatives and the network, because the work of YABT, that's fundamental, and the international organization. These dialogues are going to give shape this agenda and the conduction of the regional discussions, and also the hemispheric consultations. As I said before, we collect the different recommendations, initiatives, and concrete solutions of youth. We guarantee the representation of the voices of the youth in the Americas, because not everyone can attend to this meeting. They can do this online, but anyway, it is important that they see that their opinions are welcomed in the different topics to strengthen the legitimacy and responsiveness, and also to the capacity to co-organize national consultations or theme aspects, theme-related aspects. Also, in the related events, we have in the related events, we have the associations that we have with different organizations. For instance, this event shows a little bit the relation in relation to energy and OLADE, which is an organization with presence in the region and of huge importance in terms of energy, and that is that is renowned. This allows us to talk about agriculture. We have this with FAO, ICA, depending on the subregion and the region where we are going to be interacting. As I said, we present permanently, we are permanently communicating with Greek and the review of the implementation of the summits, and we are conveying permanently messages, ideas, or the themes that the youth are working on in the region. Now we have reached to TIC Americas. I think that we should actually be focusing this a little bit longer, because this could be an aspect that can this is going to work as component of the youth that works in the third forum of the youth in Colombia, and ever since it has been the showcase of the emerging entrepreneurship and startups led by the youth and presented during the Summit of the Americas. Here we have businessmen of great corporations, both regional and global, in the framework of the summit. And the emerging startups has visibility, where they create links of business with the company that is a very little common in summit. And this program has consolidated as a platform so that the young entrepreneurs can provide innovative solutions in the regional environment, and some of them internationally as well, so that they can present this innovation. This is in these 9 editions, they have highlighted to promote, they have stood out to have the alliances internationally, the private sector and the government. A successful case has been of the TIC Americas, has been the one in energy sector that has been Inventive Power, which is an initiative coming from Guadalajara, Mexico. And this is a company that devotes to the development of innovative technologies and efficiency use of energy. And it is oriented to reduce cost in energy, both in residential and industrial sectors. The ACP of solar concentration decreases up to 80% of the consumption of fuels that heat the boilers for thermal energy when using solar energy. YABT's role is to facilitate the ministerial meeting in the Americas of 2024, where we have the CEO of this company, and they made a presentation. And with that, they participated in one of the political dialogues about energy security that took place among business people and ministers this way. This showed that these companies were led by youth and how they have contributed to in this sector within their communities in Mexico. What are the recommendations based on evidence? When we talk about the evidence-based recommendations, we are talking fundamentally about the political laboratories, these laboratory of policies. These took place in the 9th Summit of the Americas, the previous one in the USA, and these facilitated to incorporate the policies and practices with a special focus on the youth. This brings together experts, economists, and practitioners of development so that the youth can have key information available and updated one that support their proposals. As allies, we have had the OAS, World Bank, CEPAL, and different organizations, UNESCO as well, and the Department of State of the United States, among others. These laboratories have their goal to develop soft skills, as I said, leadership. And I'm not going to extend much on this, but currently we need to develop these laboratories of leadership. When they have this diplomacy and protocol. This takes place with protocol today of the Netherlands. And those who are interested in participating at the end of this presentation, you can, I'm going to give you the links so that you can check out the website and see how they are moving forward with all of this. The last part of my presentation, or what do you? This is how they have talked about the policies in energy. I would like to talk about some recommendations and proposals by the youth through the dialogues of the youth, the hemispheric consultation that was very recent between March and September, and the related events that come from the report of advance that has been submitted to GRIG, that is to the representatives of the ministries of each one of the countries. This input is part of the draft of the Declaration of the Youth, and is going to take to the Forum of the Youth in the Dominican Republic to be discussed and adopted by the work groups, the theme working groups, and then submitted to the presidents of the hemisphere, the pillars of the 10th Summit that have been working with allies, as I said, ICA, FAO, in terms of food security, in public security, taking as a reference the work of the OAS and the Program of Water of the Americas and energy security. We're working with, in cooperation with OLADE. It is important if you consider that since you are more expert and you're more linked to this issue of energy, you consider that there is something that is missing and that can come into the consultation and that can complement the information with whatever you consider valid. What are the three topics? By posing the questions within the consultation, we have the renewable and energies and diversification of the matrix. And we also have the three contributions, which is the solar cooperatives. These are the responses of the participants or the youth from the communities to share clean energies and to establish diversification, the territorial diversification of energy plants and macro stations to reduce the blackouts and to have the hydropower turbines and windmills, etc. In terms of energy efficiency and innovation, we have three recommendations as well. One is the creation of a smart electrical grids or smart grids with sensors and digital meters to optimize consumption. The other one is public build and private buildings that would be generated from their own energy through solar panels. And thirdly, to establish monitoring systems and intelligent management systems with the differentiated rates. In terms of sustainable mobility and transportation is to foster public electrical transportation and to incentivize the use of electrical cars. In terms of governance and inclusion, there is two proposals to have political energies and other multilateral, and of also to create these youth platforms, regional energy monitoring. In terms of financing and business models, we also have two proposals we see. This is to create funds for incubators of young energy startups and the communities themselves. The idea is to strengthen the support of the companies in these sectors. This goes hand in hand with the fiscal incentives and bonuses. In terms of energy, of cultural education and energy awareness, in these, we will have these events. It would be great to have energy education schools and universities. In that line, the creation of brigades of energy. Also in the educational centers. These we formulate how the social actors and how we are going to involve energy security. And these were how the social actors should get involved in energy security. First, to promote the access to renewable energies in the vulnerable communities and how this can contribute to the energy situation and how to improve the energy situation. That was 42.9%, but 28.6%, they develop public-private alliances, partnerships for investment in energy infrastructure to strengthen the access to energies in rural areas. And that the youth need for okay, we have the type of support the need that the youth need to innovate the sustainable energy. The most voted was the partnership with companies and public sector with 28.6%, and the second was with almost 24% of the answers was the option of financing for projects and entrepreneurship. And to end the presentation, and this is for the youth who were the three options in renewable energies, energy storage and diversification of the energy matrix, and subsidies and financing. And this also YABT in terms of the current and previous government partners and the international organizations. We have all these organizations. These are the private sector that we stand out at the governments of the countries, seat of the summit, multilateral banks, and the UN agencies. We also have the sponsorship partners from the private sector. We have a Chamber of Commerce, companies, and others. We have these partners who are committed to work, engage with the youth. That's why we're happy. And why is this? And because of this, we have this effort of what we're doing at the youth level across the hemisphere. I would like to extend the invitation so that you can send it before the September 15th. And this is to the seventh summit of the Americas in the framework of the summit, whether as presidential delegates or virtual delegates, you can do that as well. This would be a very unique experience that will contribute to the training as leaders of today and tomorrow, as it was mentioned, of a great involvement of the youth of the region. The most important thing for YMBT is that you're part of the project, that you feel this belonging to it. The agency, the foreign, to keep contributing to the working groups and to be the witnesses of the achievement of this work that we've been doing for 26 years. And without you, it would be impossible to continue. I leave you the data of the organization for all those interested, and I would like this is I would like to invite Diana Cadillo, and they told me to present this morning to tell you a little bit about the experience of related to the YABT. Thank you so much for your attention and the time.
Hola, bueno, buenos días a todos y a todas.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Diana. I am a co-founder of Youth for Energy, and I'm going to give you a few words to tell you a little bit about the work that we've been carrying out with the YABT. Recently we led this virtual program of youth that took place last July. And in this program, the YABT participated in a session in geo-governance topics and energy diplomacy. We believe it was quite interesting what the YABT has been doing. And now that they have added in their agenda the energy security issue, we believed it was very important to do some kind of connection between these first encounter of youth and the seventh forum that is going to take place, as it was mentioned by Dr. Georgina, in Dominican Republic. The work with the YABT is still very strong, and I would like to invite so that you can apply to become delegates. We as youth we're going to be participating in this important space, which we seek to keep articulating and to keep working together, because we believe that working together, we are going to bring about a greater impact for our region in terms of energy security. That is extremely important. So thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Georgina y Diana, por sus palabras, y con esto damos por concluido.
Thank you, Georgina, for your words. And now we have concluded the first part of our encounter. And we will have a very short recess to be able to go into the breakout rooms, which is the Aula Magna and the Salon Price, which is on the left when you go out of the door. And to have people from the Chile and organizing team who's going to guide all the people, because we're going to have two different topics. So I'll leave you to it. Thank you very much.